That's odd. 172 whole episodes, 3 live-action movies, complete switches in animation style and focus to absurd degrees. There's only one logical explanation for all this. Executive meddling! There's been no show I've feared going back to this year more than the Fairly OddParents. And that sucks to say because I really enjoy watching it. I think it's a funny, endearing, and creative animated series that stands the test of time in many ways. Up to season 5. After that, it started to become not just a shell of its former self, but embarrassing in the fact it was still running. The Fairly OddParents ended up running for 16 years, 19 if you count the Oh Yeah shorts. But you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who'll say it went out on a high note. Those people are out there, and more power to them, but the majority of fans of the series now kind of wish it ended in 2006. It was in January of that year that creator Butch Hartman announced on his website that Season 5 would be the last, and indeed, when it finished airing on Nick on November 25th, 2006, it was out of production, with Butch's second show, Danny Phantom, not far behind in that regard. But in January of 2007, he announced that the Fairly OddParents was back in production. This is going to be a recurring pattern going forward, but Butch has stated that getting cancelled then renewed again happened at least 5 times over the course of its run, dating back to the very first season. That I'm gonna press X to doubt on for a few reasons, but back to 2007, he met with Nickelodeon executives one day to negotiate continuing the show, and they suggested adding a baby. And by this point in television history, I get the impression that was more of an insult than an offer. Regardless, Butch was enthusiastic, and he and his team went to work on a 6th season, though some crew members had left to work on other projects. The first real announcement of the new character came during a special on July 7th, 2007, detailing 77 facts about the show, and it ended with news breaking that Cosmo and Wanda would be having a baby. This served as the plotline for the Fairly OddParents' 8th TV movie and 6th season premiere, Fairly Odd Baby, which premiered on Nickelodeon on February 18th, 2008 to a very large audience of 8.8 million viewers, eager to know what they'll call the baby and what gender it will be. But after all this, ratings went down again, the following year's TV movie Wishology only reaching about half of that dizzying high. What caused such a drop in support after such a beautiful moment? One day, Timmy Turner and his fairy godparents, Cosmo and Wanda, are in the park, but instead of playing with Timmy, the godparents get distracted with all the babies and how cute they are. So they decide to have one, which apparently hasn't been done in Fairy World in 1,000 years. Thank Cosmo for that. But Timmy finds a loophole in the rules where they never said a godchild couldn't wish for it, so they go with that. Unfortunately, Cosmo has to carry it because he's the youngest fairy, and that's how they roll. I could bring up that we have seen fairies before that appear to be younger, and how Cosmo must have gotten through Fairy Academy much faster than all the more competent fairies somehow, but male pregnancy jokes are the bigger priority here. And there's this whole thing with pixies and anti-fairies trying to steal it because we need some stakes. The baby's eventually born and named Poof, after the only thing it can say, and near the end, they reveal what gender Poof is. It's a boy, because boys like squirt guns.
The angelic choir is going to cost you extra.
From here on out, the general formula of the Fairly OddParents remains intact, Timmy learning to be careful what he wishes for, but with the addition of a baby that can cause trouble or hinder their progress. I think you can figure out why this caused such a fuss. The show has always introduced new characters, especially early on in their seasons. Think Chip Skylark, the Tooth Fairy, Blonda. But those characters were only ever brought up again when they served a useful function. To say nothing of how Poof is characterized, he'll spend a good majority of his screen time just floating there, looking cute. Some characters changed very little across their first few seasons back, others quite a lot. But to start with Timmy, while it is nice that he learns to be a friendly, supportive big brother to Poof, his characterization otherwise felt like he was on autopilot. As selfishly as he could act in the later classic seasons, it's natural that he should still be learning about rules and boundaries and how to make wishes that wouldn't endanger others. You don't get as much of that in 6, which might be a good thing if you took issue with that dynamic, but it was something of a character reset in some ways. Cosmo and Wanda get caught in a downward spiral due to the new problems faced with raising a child. Cosmo's incompetence and stupidity start to get more tiring because they haven't really put a new spin on it, besides comparing him to a baby, and Wanda gets more stressed more easily. This is the start of them feeling less like parents for Timmy, despite their quirky nature, and more distant with them starting their own family and all. As for Poof, I won't cry foul on him being boring because he will get at least one joke in per episode, but they can still never rub off the feeling that he's just there because of an executive mandate. He's not as organic as the other characters introduced over the years, and he should be the most important, so what gives? Jorgen von Strangle actually gets better again after being a wreck in Season 5. He's more of an authority figure than in a while, and tends to do more to protect Fairy World rather than endanger it. I'm savouring this while it lasts before he goes downhill again. Due to the events of Fairly OddParents, the anti-fairies and pixies get a little more focus, with them wanting to steal Poof for their own nefarious means. The pixies sort of fade away over time, but you can make a drinking game out of the amount of Fairly OddParents characters that fade away, while the anti-fairies are more fleshed out and prevalent. In Season 6 for the better, and 7 onward for the worse. You'll be happy to know Butch and Broshhound finally get real names. In Season 7, Broshhound reveals her name as Barnaby, and in Season 10, Butch renames himself Filthy, as in Filthy Rich. And I will stick with these names for every other Fairly OddParents video I will ever make in my lifetime. You want to know how they fare in Season 6? Oh, you naive summer child. Not as well, to be generous. While they were always meant to be self-centered and neglectful of Timmy's feelings and needs, they go a lot further now to show that they're bad parents. Filthy especially becomes meaner and more reckless as the show goes on, but I'll save examples of that for later. I guess it's because Vicky appears less often now, despite her originally being the primary antagonist. She was never one of my favourite things about the show, to be fair, but her diminishing role in the show in this era, and much more extreme actions when she does pop up, go to show how far removed the idea for the show was compared to when it started. Across the second half of the show's run, it's less about a kid going through his own life with magic, and more about an escapist fantasy with no basis in reality. This is especially evident in how they handled school. This is the last season where Chester, AJ, Sanjay, Elma, Francis, and Trixie get extensive screen time, with only Mr. Crocker remaining in the narrative. And even then, they don't show him teaching as often. So he's just some lunatic chasing this kid down for reasons only he knows, which is a lot less relatable. Side note, he doesn't shout, "Fairy godparents!" anymore. He just shouts, "Fairies!" And that's a hard change to live with. But they put more of their time and effort into the fantasy characters, like the sci-fi villain Dark Laser. He originally appeared in an episode about bringing fictional characters to life as a parody of Darth Vader, but he becomes a recurring villain in Season 6. He's not the worst addition to the lineup, but it's hard to take him seriously after too long, especially since his love for his toy dog Flipsy becomes a very tiresome joke. Don't you love it when characters in comedy shows tell the same joke for seasons on end? Because of Poof, Dr. Rip Studwell appears more often to dump exposition. He's a hot professional of his field, and everyone loves him, but he's a total asshole to Wanda. That side gets more explored as he appears more, and I think it was the writers' room's way of retaliating against Butch Hartman as he became an egomaniac. As for the Mark Chang saga, that continues to progress over the show's run. He continues to live on Earth, but makes visits back to Yogopotamia where his relationship with his parents is mended somewhat, and his engaged bride is dealt with. While they run out of things to do with him as well, this is the one thing I was happy to see them explore again. Most of the rest of the cast, however, felt like they were drudged up and repurposed just for the sake of keeping the show going. A lot of fans wish the show had ended with Channel Chasers, or in my case Fairy Idol or The Last Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, But there's an argument that Season 6 belongs in the classic era despite the time difference. Why is that?
I'm just gonna take these paper towels up to my room alone, so don't bother me.
Oh no! We're bad parents!
For one thing, it's not a bad season by any means. Despite the characters acting differently and the addition of Poof, the show's formula had not been disrupted, and most of the stories are the same sort of thing you'd get in Season 4 or 5. You could rework Future Lost into a Season 6 episode without changing anything essential. You could rework Odd Squad into a Season 5 episode without changing anything essential. The lineup isn't even that much weaker than 5's. I don't think it's classic Fairly OddParents more out of conviction that they should have ended in 2006, rather than the season's own merits. It's average all around, not a whole lot of standout good episodes, and still not many truly awful episodes. They're more plentiful, but aren't everywhere yet. They're mostly caused by the cropping up of more retcons that can impact the experience, especially for passionate viewers who will know when a plot point doesn't match up with established lore. For instance, in King Chang, when Cosmo and Wanda are shrunk, their magic isn't powerful anymore, despite there being plenty of episodes where they shrink, sometimes to microscopic sizes, and can still use their magic fine. This is also the start of them losing their wands more often than I lose respect for Edgar Brapstein. Once in a while that's fine to boost tension, but when it happens all the time, it's the worst thing comedy or adventure can be: predictable. It's a little hard for me to describe why I don't like the animation style of the post-revival seasons, but here goes. Season 6 starts off still looking very good, on par with 4 and 5, but they slowly overdo the lighting and shadows where they aren't required, and the colours get too vibrant. I've said before that despite seeming plain, the Fairly OddParents had one of the best art styles of its time because of the colour choices and consistency in depth and appearance. That isn't true anymore after 2008. If anything, going too far shows off the downsides of the designs, that they are plain and basic and ill-equipped for super dramatic settings. And as you'll see, it's only going to get worse as the seasons go on. I'm gonna appreciate the bad and savor the good while I can. One of my favourite episodes of Season 6 is Mission Responsible, where Timmy's put in charge of Poof while Cosmo and Wanda go on a date. It was probably the episode that best knew how to use Poof. Give him his powers, make him a time bomb for mishaps, but still telegraph his cuteness and friendship with Timmy. You can do all that in one episode. 9 Lives used Catman pretty well, I think. Adam West has to snap out of his super persona and live a normal life with normal jobs. It's Odd Jobs again, but with Adam West. How could they mess it up? The End of the University is a full-blown parody of the themes of Star Wars, with Timmy going to a school run by Dark Laser and turning to the dark side. I'm not even a die-hard fan of the source material, but I thought this was an original way to spoof it. Easily the biggest highlight of Season 6 is Wishology, a 3-parter where Timmy's embroiled in a prophecy that'll save the magical universe. Actually, he isn't, it's this dude. Despite the epic story, it's very fluffy. You get a lot of diverse sequences, locations, and dynamics. And I'm rather impressed that they could stay entertaining for 130 minutes straight. It's not my favorite of the movies or my preferred finale, but you get a lot of bang for your buck. As for my least favorites of Season 6, Poof's Playdate retcons its own sister episode. When Cosmo and Wanda regress to teenagers in Wishy Washy, Poof stops existing because he wasn't born at that point in their lives. Here, they're babies and Poof remains, in a really dull babysitting episode with this random kid on the TV yelling about colons making it just that much better. Open wide and say "Ah!" might have the best title of the season, but that's about the best written thing about it. This just seemed to be an excuse to do hospital jokes, often with little rhyme or reason. Everyone's just kinda thrown into it, mostly unwillingly. Birthday Bashed is a mess of a birthday episode. They really tried to convince me that Timmy was losing his parents this birthday, yeah right. Then they end it by reaffirming why he needs them. Yes, Season 6, at least you understand what the show's about, unlike the last 4. Chip Skylark returning for one last performance was nice though. The worst episode of Season 6 is easily, Vicky gets fired, where Timmy finally manages to give Vicky the pink slip, but she'll end up taking over the world anyway. It's just the moment in Channel Chasers where Timmy realizes he needs her to make him miserable, only much longer and more nihilistic. Just for that, it's down there with It's a Wishful Life, and the show still gets worse after this.
Beware, baby Poof. I'll be back for you someday soon. So speaks. Oh, how I hate this name.
Foop wrecked the show. He's just the worst. How he came to be, what he did to the anti-fairies, and his voice, his evil plans, his running jokes are not fun at all. And yet they keep pushing him, harder every season actually, to the point where he has no novelty. Of all the characters they could choose to run into the ground, why the evil baby that can only do baby things? Don't fret because later on, they forget he's a baby a lot of the time. I'm just curious if there are any hardcore defenders of this guy, and if they think the writers treated him well as time went on. If the second classic season broadened the focus of the show, the second revived season did the exact opposite. Filthy will often sneak into episodes that aren't even about Timmy's family problems, and Mr. Crocker continued his descent into being this weird old man who wasn't much of a teacher anymore. Along with Foop, these two seem to be the characters the staff really wanted to make the show about, but the problem is they can only really bounce off Dinkelberg and Mrs. Crocker, and even then not very humorously, and they don't have hearts, you can't really care for them. The near-complete lack of stories about school, home life, or even his relationship with Poof really went to show how little there was to do with Timmy anymore. If he wasn't properly shown why he needs his godparents, why are they still around? Well, so Cosmo and Wanda's marriage can get more bitter and loveless. Sure, they always bickered and got into arguments, but at this point, Cosmo's a horrible father, husband, and completely dependent on others to do the simplest things like thinking and wish granting. They make it very clear now that Wanda shouldn't stay with him anymore, and do nothing with it. What we have here is a broken marriage. That was broken because Butch Hartman thought it would be funny. Now, this is Poof's second season, so what did they do with him to prove he wasn't a worthless addition? Send him off to spellementary school. Okay, he still gets a lot of screen time for most of the season, but sending him away at the tail end indicates that he wasn't interesting enough on his own. So they put him in a new location where he still wasn't interesting enough on his own. These spellementary episodes are a different show all their own. Why am I watching these? Well, here are the 3 best episodes of the season. Planet Poof managed to surprise me by being a good episode. Poof winds up on Yugopotamia, and the Queen uses his cuteness as a weapon to get what she wants. You don't know how happy I was that they not only referenced older episodes, but understood what made them work. Flyboy is a nice little spin on The Fly. Timmy wants to see a version of it as a fly on the wall, but learns how human society treats the species. Not in a friendly manner. I like the appearance of Dash from Danny Phantom too. I wasn't expecting that. Bad Air Day is obviously going to the top of Season 7. It's just a cute bonding story between Mr. Crocker and Poof. Say hello to the last time they ever treat him like a 3-dimensional character. At least they made me care about him and his need for a son, which frankly makes this one of his very best of the whole show. Now for the poopy. Croc Talk sees the start of the Fairly OddParents trying a little too hard to stay hip and relevant. Mr. Crocker starts an online talk show, and keeps getting attacked by a monster. They just mashed 2 completely unrelated ideas together, and of course the result was unfunny. Anti-Poof is the introduction to Foop, so of course it's going in the bottom 5. Doing another season premiere full of baby jokes struck me as a bad sign of things to come, and unfortunately Anti-Wanda's pregnancy doesn't have enough Christian values to elevate this derivative special. Old Man in the C- goes to show how inept Filthy became as a character over time. He goes back to grade school, and he's not even able to do that without misbehaving. They do know he's a dad, right? Playdate of Doom is rubbish. Why on earth, under any circumstance, would Wanda be fine with Foop having a playdate with Poof? And why on earth would she believe everything Foop says? You already know I hate this kind of story, and throwing this blowback into it only makes it much harder to enjoy. My Scapades is my least favourite Season 7 episode, because whenever I watch it, I just really want to put on Tom and Jerry instead. This is a tedious parody at best, and a mockery of the classic cartoon at worst. It's not a good sign when they're so strapped for new ideas that they just feel like making a different show instead. Season 7 is one of the longest seasons in the history of the Fairly OddParents, containing 39 episodes spread across 3 years. It's immediately followed by Season 8, which only has 5. It's very likely they got a 26 episode season and put Anti-Poof and all the regular episodes in Season 7, and saved the rest of the specials and final animated TV movie for a separate portion of the run. Good on them for organising their workload, but Season 8 sadly isn't that much better than 7. I do have some time left in this video, so why not review every episode of Season 8? Garbage. 3 seasons in a row that start by introducing babies, and this one is a pixie somehow, and she is nothing more than a plot device, a trophy for Poof and Foop to fight over. Cosmo is unfunny, the whole production is unfunny, and have I mentioned that Cosmo's unfunny yet? At this point, he never emotes beyond a chip a squeak anymore.
The good news is I've named my nickel Philip. What's the bad news? It's a girl nickel.
Okay, let's do it again. And Timmy, this time let's try it with acting. And script girl, give me some coffee.
I don't want to put down Darren Norris too hard, but this is objectively bad voice acting now. It's not easy on the ears, it's not emotive, and it certainly doesn't fit most situations. The production's starting to fall apart. Alpha J and that jerk who likes Sonic Heroes have already given this movie what for, but it bears repeating that this failed as a 10th anniversary special. No one asked for a third of the movie to be set in a courtroom, and the big reveal that Timmy made a secret wish for everything to stay the same for 50 years is a twist only a mother could love. With Timmy being forgiven for all this, the show pretty much fell to pieces. Every event following would break the internal logic of the show more and more. Some of these elements in the movie sound good on paper, but it all went towards an excuse to give up. This is a sequel to the Season 7 episode Ad, which was okay but not so hilarious that it deserved its own story arc. They just show a whole planet full of filthies, which is only so funny for so long, then just repeat the problem and ending of the original episode. That's not what a sequel should do. I'm not kidding when I say this is a story arc. They do the exact same story again in Season 9. When losers attack, treats you, the viewer, like an idiot. This isn't a 24-hour time difference, stop lying to me! Then Foop, Dark Laser, Mr. Crocker, the teacher, and Vicky, the babysitter, team up to kill a 10-year-old boy. Even the lowest quality fanfiction would provide a better reason for why they can all suddenly know each other and work together. The existence of the losers alone should get Timmy's godparents taken away, if his misadventures have created this many enemies and seeped this far into the human world. The show's canon has spun out of control. I can't believe they didn't have someone around to check if this was a bad idea. That should continue into future episodes. Here we are, the final ever standard definition episode. 8 seasons, 126 episodes, and a massive decline in the quality of the title cards later, we finally get an episode dedicated to Timmy revealing his godparents to his real parents. And it's cute. There was more oomph to the brief instances of this earlier, but the characters actually care about each other and the rules here, and the chemistry they all share is very nice. There's funnier episodes in Season 6 and 7, but this honestly isn't the worst place they could have ended it. It doesn't save Season 8 by any stretch, but at least they went out with dignity.
I wish I was Drake now!
Hello, handsome.
No way! Best wish ever! This is gonna be insane.